questions, and please stay with us. Our the Buffalo News is coming up next.
Okay. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. And your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, May 28th. Your readers today are
Ruth Novotniak
and Pat Lamont. And let's see what our weather is holding for us. Partly sunny and not as warm today, a high of 65. Mainly clear tonight with a low of 50. Winds picking up tomorrow with sun and clouds, a high of 66. Saturday, breezy with clouds and sun, a high of 64. Sunday, sunshine and some clouds, a high of 70. Monday, a couple of showers. And our national high was in Punta Gorda, Florida, 96. And the low was in Bridgeport, California, 25. Sunrise this morning at 5:42 and sunset tonight at 8:44. And our weather trivia. What dinosaur has a weather nickname? I never even knew that one had one. I don't know about you. Brontosaurus is called the thunder lizard. So put that in your trivia cap. And now to our front page news. Lawmakers work to finish budget that increases aid to city. Lawmakers on Wednesday were working to finalize a $268 billion state budget that increases aid to the city of Buffalo by at least $65 million, includes rebate checks to consumers for energy costs, increases in aid for hospitals and nursing homes, and imposes a new tax on alternative nicotine products. The Assembly and Senate were racing to pass the remaining bills in the spending plan 8 weeks after they missed the April 1 deadline to pass an on-time budget. They have not received paychecks while the budget is late. Both houses of the state legislature have passed several parts of the budget over the last week, including measures to reform insurance and immigration laws, push back climate change goals, reform the Tier 6 pension class, and expand universal child care across New York. Governor Kathy Hochul, who negotiated the budget with Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie and Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart Cousins, signed at least 2 of the budget bills into law earlier Wednesday. The Buffalo-born Democrat and all state lawmakers are up for re-election this November. A number of legislators have primaries next month. A budget is a reflection of your priorities, a reflection of my priorities, and with this conclusion of a long process, I feel confident that New Yorkers from every corner of the state are going to be beneficiaries of the hard-fought fights that I thought were so essential to get us to this point, Hochul said. I want to make sure that New York is not just a place where families struggle to get by, barely making it. They should thrive here. They should see the promise of a better future, not just for themselves, but for their children. And I believe that this budget is an important part of getting that done. The budget bills that passed or were expected to pass through both houses of the state legislature later Wednesday included increased aid of at least $65 million to the city of Buffalo to put it around $231.3 million, which followed earlier plans by Hochul to hike Buffalo aid by $40 million and by Assembly Democrats to hike it by at least $56.68 million. It will fund Buffalo as the city continues to face fiscal woes. Next, in an effort to alleviate soaring energy prices paid by inflation-weary New Yorkers, the spending plan will offer rebates depending on one's income up to $200. Next, increases of $706 million for hospitals, $480 million for nursing homes, and $20 million for assisted living services, from a pot of money that Hochul had earmarked for hospitals and nursing homes in her executive budget. The Buffalo News reported in March that Leading Age New York, which represents nonprofit nursing homes, showed high percentages of nursing homes in Western New York operating in the red. Next, imposes a 75% wholesale tax on alternative nicotine products such as Zyn as a way to continue to cut into profits related to tobacco. Next, assesses a 0.35 flat tax on all managed healthcare organizations. That requires federal approval. Next, offers a 2.7 targeted inflationary increase across the state for programs and services for human service workers and organizations. The budget did not appear to address the looming problem for some 450,000 New Yorkers, the loss of their health coverage on July 1 under federal cuts that were part of President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Consumers who have incomes between 200% and 250% of the federal poverty level, which is $31,920 to $39,000, have been covered by New York's Essential Plan. Those consumers, which include 42,587 people in the 3 congressional districts covering Western New York, now risk losing coverage. Assemblymember Gary Pretlow of Mount Vernon, who chairs the Assembly's Ways and Means Committee, said the state was unable to backfill the cuts imposed at the federal level. On Tuesday, lawmakers also passed measures to create buffer zones, keeping protesters away from congregants outside of houses of worship, extend deadlines for the state to meet pollution reduction targets, soften the environmental review process for building projects, and make changes to the Tier 6 pension plan, which covers 61,000 public employees in Western New York. Tuesday's legislative work also passed restrictions on plaintiffs suing over crashes to lower the number of unnecessary lawsuits the governor contends have contributed to New Yorkers paying some of the nation's highest auto insurance rates. Hochul, who has made affordability her signature issue as she seeks re-election, has said intoxicated drivers and scofflaws should not be able to profit from incidents they caused. Ruth?
Trump says the U.S. will be the ones to watch over Strait. President Trump said that no one nation would control the Strait of Hormuz, pushing back on Iranian demands to manage the vital energy waterway. Nobody's going to control it. It's international waters, Trump said Wednesday at the White House. The strait's going to be open to everybody, and the U.S. will watch over it. Trump was asked during a meeting of his cabinet officials if he was comfortable with a short-term deal that would open the strait, but under Iranian control. He didn't indicate what steps the United States would take to ensure free passage of vessels through the waterway, which has been closed since the start of the war at the end of February. Iran has maintained a blockade of the strait, and commercial shippers have been hesitant to attempt transit. Trump's comments cast doubt on prospects for an immediate breakthrough between the U.S. and Iran, with markets optimistic for a deal after both sides reported progress in recent days. The status of the strait is a key sticking point. Trump indicated the U.S. was not satisfied with negotiations to end the almost 3-year war, noting that maybe we have to go back and finish it, without elaborating on whether that meant further military action. Iran is very much intent. They want very much to make a deal. So far, they haven't gotten there. We're not satisfied with it, but we will be. Either that or we'll have to just finish the job, Trump said without elaborating. The deal has got to be perfect, he later added. Trump's remarks followed an Iranian state television report on a draft interim peace deal, which said maritime traffic through the Strait of Hormuz could return to normal within a month of it coming into effect. The White House cast the report as false. This report from Iranian-controlled media is not true, and the MOU they released is a complete fabrication, the White House said in a social media post. Nobody should believe what Iranian state media is putting out. Further dampening prospects for an agreement, Trump downplayed the possibility of Iranian sanctions relief. We're not talking about easing any of the sanctions, no money, no nothing, he said. Other key points in negotiations reported by Iran's IRIB News included the U.S. lifting its naval blockade on Iranian ports and the American Navy leaving waters surrounding Iran. The draft also said Iran and Oman will have a mechanism in place to oversee shipping in the strait. That's one of the most contentious issues holding up a deal, with the U.S. saying vessels must be allowed free passage. Oman has not commented in recent weeks on Iran, saying the two are in discussions about managing the strait. Managing the passage of ships, their inspection, and receiving service fees are at the discretion of the Islamic Republic and in partnership and in cooperation with Oman, the Iranian state TV report said. Iran hasn't committed to unconditionally reopening the strait, it said. Iran and the U.S. are negotiating to extend their ceasefire by around 2 months and reopen the vital straits. Tehran's effective closure of the waterway at the start of the war in February has sent oil and natural gas prices soaring and pushed up inflation globally. Both Iran and the U.S. have said their talks via mediators such as Pakistan and Qatar are making headway. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said Wednesday that there's been some progress and some interest, and we'll see over the next few hours and days whether progress could be made. Iran has kept up indirect contacts with the Americans, the Deputy Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council said Wednesday in Russia. Until we have agreed on all issues, we consider that we have agreed on nothing. He added that a completely different procedure will be introduced for Hormuz passage and that Iran and Oman are holding talks to determine that mechanism. An Iranian delegation recently returned to Tehran following intense talks in Doha that yielded good progress, according to a diplomat with knowledge of the visit. The negotiations, in coordination with the U.S., focused on the Strait of Hormuz and Iran's highly enriched uranium, while the issue of Tehran's frozen funds was also discussed as part of a potential final agreement, said the diplomat. Facing domestic pressure to end a conflict that's driven up inflation and gas prices and imperiled his party's prospects in November's midterms, Trump has maintained that he won't be rushed on a deal. He said Wednesday that Iranians thought U.S. political pressure would force his hand in negotiations. They thought they were going to outweight me, Trump said. We'll outweight him. He's got the midterms. I don't care about the midterms. Look what happened last night, he added, referring to victories for candidates he backed in primary races. The warring sides, since notching a fragile ceasefire in early April, also need to agree on what portion of Iranian financial assets will be unfrozen and how quickly. On Tuesday, Iranian state media said Tehran wants $12 billion unfrozen once the interim deal is agreed. Iran hawks in the U.S., including Senator Lindsey Graham, are likely to balk at such concessions and pressure Trump to revert to bombing the country. Another potential obstacle is a parallel war in Lebanon between Israel and Tehran-backed Hezbollah militants. Israel has stepped up attacks in recent days and said its ground forces are moving further into its northern neighbor's territory. Iran insists the ceasefire has to cover all fronts, including Lebanon. Israel, which started the wider war when it bombed Iran alongside the U.S., is reluctant to accept any restrictions on its operations. Israeli officials have argued for the need to protect border communities and counter rockets and drone attacks from Hezbollah, which is classified as a terrorist organization by the U.S. Several explosive drones fell in Israeli territory near the border with Lebanon on Wednesday, the Israel Defense Forces said.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour, and we will move on to our editorial. Justified alarm. It's time for New York State to take action on data centers. At the very least, state leaders should be sharply scrutinizing the gigantic tax breaks these wealthy companies are receiving, the massive amounts of energy they require, and the possible negative impacts on the communities in which they are placed. A few different pieces of state legislation now under consideration suggest that might be happening. But if nothing solid emerges from the tiny amount of time left in New York legislative session, communities throughout the state could be wondering what hit them as they experience the effect of this 21st century land rush. There are many unanswered questions about data centers. Grid demands. In the light of recent prediction from the New York Independent Systems Operator that its reliability margin, the amount of electricity in reserve it can call upon during strikes in demand, will shrink to 417 megawatts this summer, the lowest in recent history. How will large data centers now in contemplation further strain NYISO's capacity? To date, there are more than 40 requests from large data centers to connect to the state's power grid, with some, like Stream Data Centers proposed for the Stamp Industrial Park in Genesee County, needing as much as 500 megawatts annually, enough to power up to 500,000 homes. Governor Kathy Hochul has directed the Public Service Commission, which regulates New York's utilities, to look at policies that would require large energy users to either generate their own cleanup power or pay higher electricity rates. It's unclear when those policies would be finalized. The financial incentives required by data center companies are just as supersized as their power needs. As reported by the News' Matt Glynn, if approved, Stream will receive $1.4 billion in tax breaks from the Genesee County Economic Development Center in exchange for just 125 permanent jobs, which amounts to $11.2 million in subsidies per job. Similar projects in other states are equally lavished with incentives. In Richland Parish, Louisiana, Meta is getting $3.3 billion in tax breaks to build a new data center. It's not known which tech company the Stream facility will service. As Kasia Tarzinska, senior research analyst at Government Accountability Policy Center, Good Jobs First states, these are wasteful subsidies for an industry that is growing very quickly and doesn't need any public investments or support. Indeed, these multi-billion-dollar companies should not be requesting public subsidies from New York, a state where 450,000 stand to lose their health care insurance this year. New York state legislation now under consideration, Stop Subsidizing Data Centers Act, would prohibit data centers from receiving sales tax abatements. property tax abatements, and most low-cost power from NYPA. There is another legislation being discussed, including a bill proposing a 3-year moratorium on the insurance of permits for new data centers. That would give New York Department of Environmental Conservation time to produce an environmental impact report on data centers and propose new or amended regulations. The huge scale of these projects in acreage, taxpayer cost, and energy use demand thoughtful study by state officials, though a moratorium might not be the best way. Data centers are needed, and not all data centers are created equal. Stream, for example, will be using a closed-loop cooling system that is filled with water just once. The company also says it will be providing an estimated $550 million over the years in new tax revenues and direct payments to local municipalities and schools. Questions about environmental impacts remain, and the project has generated a loud backlash from those who will be its neighbors, including the Tonawanda Seneca Nation and advocates for the Iroquois National Wildlife Refuge. 2 additional new data centers, one in Tonawanda, one in Chautauqua County's town of Portland, have also come up for discussion. Both raise the same troublesome issues associated with data centers throughout the U.S. They are issues that should be taken up at the state level.
And our Another Voice article is on education. It's written by Dennis Priori, who is serving his 4th term on the Board of Education for the Clarence Central School District. Recent articles and an editorial in the news address the lack of candidates who have chosen to serve on local school boards. I agree it is disheartening and unsustainable. In 27 of 38 Erie and Niagara County school districts, candidates ran unopposed. In 6 area school districts, no one ran, leaving it to write-ins, which may or may not yield viable candidates. I've attended numerous school board meetings as a teacher, administrator, and now a school board member. I can tell you that things look quite different now on the other side of the table. It wasn't that long ago, especially during COVID, when sitting Board of Education members were the lightning rods of public criticism. It was easy to show up, shout what you didn't agree with, and cause a disruption. Most meetings have been civil over the past few years, and every board allows time for public comment during the meeting. One may think being a board member means attending 1 or 2 meetings a month, but there are training sessions, serving on district and county-wide committees, attending events, and of course reading and digesting a packet before each meeting, which can range from 200 to 700 pages. I also thoroughly enjoy attending concerts, plays, art shows, sporting events, and of course graduations. The main duties of a Board of Education in New York State are set district policy, hire and evaluate the superintendent, adopt the school budget, and approve and appoint teachers, administrators, and other staff. It doesn't take extreme special skills to serve on a board, but you should be prepared to study the issues before you. I would warn against running if you see yourself as a one-issue candidate, because you'll be handling hundreds of issues in the course of your term. If you are thinking about running and serving on a school board, I suggest you start by attending a few meetings, and since most are now recorded or live streamed, you can view them at home. How to get more interested citizens to run for this volunteer position? Maybe the fact that you have read this far is a good first step. A former professor once asked me, "If not you, then who? If not now, then when?"
And our editorial cartoon today is from Michael Ramirez from Creator Syndicate. It is one frame. It is a picture of Castro in a some sort of vehicle in a box. traveling with an eagle and its claws extended, and the eagle on it has justice, referring to the United States charging Castro with many, many different charges.
Our first opinion piece is by Ken Poller from the Chicago Tribune. Sleep apnea, a problem that can be addressed. My friend Emma Cooksey dozed off driving her 7-month-old baby home one day. She narrowly avoided a catastrophic crash. Her lousy sleep was the problem. It haunted her nearly her entire adult life. She talked to doctors about it over and over again, but to no avail. After this near miss, she knew she desperately needed an answer. Cooksey finally found that her sleep had a fundamental flaw: periodic breathing pauses. People with this problem can wake up oblivious to the fact that they repeatedly stopped breathing overnight. That's sleep apnea. The delay in getting this answer for Cooksey can be blamed on widespread misconceptions about this disorder. Over time, poor sleep always wreaks havoc on health and longevity. According to recent findings, it can even lead to Parkinson's disease. Even if coffee consumption keeps you fully alert all day, insufficient sleep could be bad for your brain health, heart health, and immune function, not to mention memory recall. Sleep apnea is worthy of attention both because it is so pervasive and because its consequences go well beyond sleepiness. Sleep apnea affects approximately 1 out of 8 people worldwide. Worse still, people with sleep apnea often remain in the dark about what's going on. When you're awake, a breathing abnormality might be obvious. When you're asleep, it's another story. Cooksey's problem could have been treated well before that pivotal driving incident, but it wasn't. She is now working to get the word out about sleep apnea at project-sleep.com. Notably, the symptoms of sleep apnea vary. Sleepiness might be excessive, but not always. People may have morning headaches or not. Maybe loud snoring, sometimes high blood pressure. Some never feel refreshed after sleeping, but some manage fine if the coffee keeps flowing. Sleep apnea goes undiagnosed all too often, especially in women. The outmoded assumption made by many doctors is that sleep apnea mainly affects men, and mainly overweight men. Fortunately for Cooksey, she finally got the right diagnosis and began an effective therapy, opening her airway with air forced through the mouth or nose, called positive airway pressure. She says the treatment was life-saving. Yet the treatment is not a miracle solution. It doesn't work for everyone. Other options are needed. How will effective solutions be found? Taxpayer funding is key. The National Institutes of Health directs taxpayer money to research based on societal need and whether the research holds promise for improving health. Drug companies or sleep tech startups may also find solutions, but many years of work may be needed. If large profits aren't likely in the short term, companies won't go there. Better treatment could reduce national health costs significantly by lessening the burden of apnea-related health problems and of missed work. This is where public investment in science can pay off big time. On top of that, doctors and patients alike need to be educated about this and other sleep disorders. The hope Cooksey and I share is that people with undiagnosed sleep apnea will receive treatment and live healthier lives. People needn't suffer from sleepiness and from all the other consequences of poor sleep.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 28 minutes after the hour, and we will continue with our opinion pieces, the next coming from Kathleen Parker of the Washington Post. What happens when we're all famous and talented by algorithm? You're not crazy. Between artificial intelligence, bots, astroturfed comment sections, and paid promotions masquerading as authentic social media content, almost nothing in our digitized world seems real or reliable. New research and reporting confirm it's worse than many anticipated. The music streaming company Deezer says more than 40% of its uploaded tracks are AI generated, according to the Washington Post. This is 4 times more than in January 2025 and translates to 75,000 such songs uploaded daily. Nary a long-suffering guitar-picking crooner in the bunch. I recently spotted a neon sign in a Manhattan bistro that read, "We're all famous, now what?" From the bunkers of our terminals and laptops, we're all keyboard kings and queens, digital potentates with wide-ranging expertise. We're authors, actors, poets, lawyers, scientists, and columnists. The Post story offers a depressing look at the surge of AI-generated products, including more self-filed lawsuits, more scientific papers, more online content, and more books. This democratization of fake talent is a byproduct of the same internet that gave everyone a platform. We've seen how well that's working out. But hiring a machine to do the work you wish you could do is cheating on the global scale. Never mind the horrors of fake scientific studies that may be used to support damaging health or environmental policies. This brings us to fake news, though not in a way President Trump would have us think. A report from Vulture Cities, a former executive who estimates that more than 90% of what's online is advertising in disguise. At its peak, the content distributor Floodify ran 65,000 dummy social media accounts to gin up interest in its clients, said Joe Lim, who founded the company. This meant that on a given day, Floodify posted 50,000 ads across TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and X, which are all supposedly the output of everyday users. How are regular people supposed to navigate galaxies of information in the face of such global cheating? Answer: most can't. Once a fake post goes viral, it becomes a credible truth and infects millions of people who believe, repeat, and live by a lie. It's not their fault. We'll fall for anything that batches our brains and with dopamine. But what about if the content is serious? Manipulating emotion for pleasure isn't removed from propagandist tricks despots have used to encourage violence. How many clips and podcasts does it take to create a cohort of warriors in, say, the manospheres? Clipping refers to pulling segments from performances, podcasts, or venues and collating them for mass consumption. A booming new industry for companies specializing in branding. Free-ranging fame seekers have so flooded the digital zone that even people as wildly successful as Justin Bieber have surrendered to the fray. Someone hired a clipping service to distribute social media-friendly clips of his Coachella performance, for example. The result was an astronomical number of views, feeds, clicks, and yet more fame. The machines would seem to be winning, but there's a bright side. Most of the books being written by AI are ebooks that don't sell as well as real books. ARXIV, a site that allows researchers to post papers, has tightened rules for publication and could ban users for a year if they are found to be using AI. Spotify gives badges to songs to indicate they're not AI generated. The increasing number of people using AI to file lawsuits poses a more daunting problem because it could clog the courts. And the media, by reporting on influencers and trends, helps make the unimportant seem important, thus exacerbating the problems of lucrative lying. Worse, it elevates bad actors who seem newsworthy but can use fame in harmful ways. This seemingly unstoppable system of rewards and no punishment for unethical behavior is in the giddy service of self-aggrandizement may predict the end of civilization as we know it, or not. Certainly, no democratic republic can survive without a well-informed citizenry. We are everything but that already. In the course of amusing ourselves to death, as Neil Postman put it in his 1985 book of the same name, we are trading knowledge for entertainment at our terrible peril. And he'd seen nothing yet.
And our last opinion piece is by Clarence Page from the Tribune Content Agency. Anti-weaponization fund is corruption and a tool for abuse. For all the middle American street cred he once commanded, Vice President Vance has turned into a disappointing tool for power. He and I were reared in the same Ohio steel town, a generation apart, and that once gave me a soft spot for him. But I was appalled last week by the way he dodged a straightforward question about President Trump's anti-weaponization fund. That's the $1.776 billion kitty the Justice Department just set up to pay off Trump loyalists who have gotten in trouble with the law, including those who stormed the Capitol in 2021. At a press briefing last week, CNN's Caitlin Collins put a hard question to Vance. She said, "You previously told me that anyone who assaulted a police officer on January 6th should go to prison. So why not rule out giving them taxpayer-funded money?" "Well, Caitlin," Vance replied, "what I said is we're going to look at everything case by case." She said, "Why not rule it out?" "Because, Caitlin, there are people who, I don't know their individual circumstances, and I don't rule things out categorically when I know nothing about a person's individual circumstances," Vance said. Alas, moments like this tell me that my fellow product of Middletown has picked up one of the worst traits of the administration he serves, a deceitfulness that becomes more smug the more obvious the truth being denied. It's a fact that the January 6th rioters assaulted the Capitol in an attempt to interfere with the constitutional transfer of presidential power. Some brutally attacked the police officers protecting the Capitol and were subsequently arrested, tried, convicted, and sentenced before Trump took power again and pardoned them. Vance, a Yale Law School grad, certainly knows enough about that tragic day and of the subsequent prosecutions to answer truthfully. But he seems to have over-lawyered his conscience. He can't admit a very simple truth because it would undermine the edifice of lies that props up his boss, his party, and his once bright future. Thus does a man who swore an oath to uphold the Constitution slide into the muck of corruption. I learned how that works in the late years of Mayor Richard Daley's reign as da boss of Chicago, a place many called a bastion of corruption. It was the late 1960s, and like many other young idealists of that turbulent era, I was determined to use my reporting skills in the time-honored tradition of muckraking journalists determined to liberate the city's hard-working taxpayers from what I perceived to be an oppressive autocratic regime. But, long story short, I was soon surprised to learn that after talking to enough real voters in Chicago's neighborhoods, that most of them actually liked Daley. In fact, many would say they loved him, as much as they might love the White Sox or the Cubs. As one ward boss explained to me about corruption, "Take what you must, but don't rob the church poor box. Some things are truly sacred." That adage came back to me as I considered the steady march of Team Trump, trampling over laws, norms, and time-honored traditions to grab as much power and taxpayer funds as they can get their hands on. In his second term, Trump has blazed new trails in public corruption. He sued the U.S. Treasury and the IRS for the absurd sum of $10 billion, and then graciously acquiesced to a settlement offered by the Department of Justice, which is run by his personal defense lawyer. This deal set aside nearly $2 billion of taxpayer money to provide a systematic process to hear and redress claims of others who suffered weaponization and lawfare. Weaponization and lawfare are MAGA code words for any investigation or prosecution of anyone under the shelter of MAGA's good graces. The purported tort at the heart of Trump's lawsuit was the leak by an IRS contractor of Trump's tax returns and those of his sons and company in the earlier probe. The Justice Department also stated that Trump, his sons, and the Trump Organization would be free from prosecution or even investigation of matters relating to tax filings prior to the agreement. That's a pretty sweet deal, even if the Trumps aren't directly entitled to any of the funds backers. As this affair makes clear, the Oval Office has become a zone of lawlessness, built by the president with the cooperation of Republican majorities in both houses of Congress and the Supreme Court, which has granted him effective immunity from prosecution. Vance is there to lend it all prim legitimacy. Lately, the trickle of evidence of Trump's self-dealing has turned into a gusher. For example, the president's recent filing with the Office of Government Ethics detailing the stock trades he made this year exudes the aroma of profiteering, insider trading, and cronyism. Police officers who defended the Capitol on January 6th are suing to stop the slush fund from paying the thugs involved in that melee. At least one Republican in Congress has spoken up in outrage. Representative Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, a former FBI agent, decried the massive discretionary fund with no oversight or approval from Congress. That's encouraging, but the need to squash this fund seems close to existential for the future of good government in America. Some might be tempted to situate Trump's corruption in a quaint old tradition stretching from Tammany Hall to the Gilded Age broodlers to the Chicago that ain't ready for reform. Plenty of voters vote the president with the devotion that neighborhood regulars once lavished on their machine bosses. But Trump is an abuser. The Anti-Weaponization Fund is a way to pay off agents of his abuse, or perhaps a down payment for more in the future. Trump has shown us from the Caribbean to the Straits of Hormuz, from the Capitol to the streets of Minneapolis, that if you let him get away with abuses, more will follow. But if you stand up, he will fold. It's time to stand up.
Exploding oil is not Iran's biggest worry. The clock is ticking for President Trump to get a deal done with Iran. Or maybe it's the other way around. Iran could be dealing with a ticking time bomb in its own oil wells with just days to go before they're destroyed. That's according to Trump, who can't seem to stop talking about exploding oil. April 23rd, Oval Office, if they don't get their oil moving, the whole oil infrastructure is going to explode. You know what I mean? Because they have no place to store it, and because they have no place to store it, if they have to stop it, something happens underground, that essentially renders it in very poor shape, and you'll never recover fully. There's a kernel of truth in what Trump is saying, although it wouldn't happen the way he's describing it, and certainly not in the short time frame he laid out. Iran's oil isn't about to go boom on its own anyway, but the war has created a challenging physics problem for the entire Middle Eastern oil industry. Shortly after Iran effectively shut down the Strait of Hormuz to foreign takers, local energy producers ran out of places to store the oil and gas that was piling up. Many neighboring Middle Eastern wells had to be shut off. Iran had to shut in its own wells this month after the United States started blockading the strait. Shut-ins are not like flipping off a light switch. They represent a complex engineering challenge that involves serious physics and meticulous planning over the course of days or even weeks. When oil wells are shut in, the pressure underground can become imbalanced, deforming the underlying structure. Those changes can damage reservoirs, which can create similar problems for nearby wells too. Water can seep in, reducing the well's potential output. Equipment can be damaged under extended downtime too. Pumps and lift systems can easily become corroded. Sand and debris can settle into equipment. Concrete casing and tubing used to seal and extract oil can lose integrity, causing leaks and potential hazardous gas releases. And yes, in rare cases, explosions. But serious damage, let alone an explosion, isn't likely. Oil industry analysts agree wells have been shut in for extended periods before, including in Iran. During the early days of the pandemic, when basically no one was traveling anywhere, the world ran out of room to store fuel that no one wanted, and oil and water was literally selling for negative dollars. Producers, including Iran, shut in their wells without any significant or lasting change. Ruth?
Breakneck Ebola epidemic outpaces world response. In an Ebola outbreak, hours matter. Yet the response to the deadly and fast-spreading epidemic in the Democratic Republic of Congo is weeks, if not months, behind, and missing thousands of people who may be at risk. Interviews with global health officials and documents from a meeting led by the World Health Organization and Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention show how behind the curve authorities are in fighting the latest outbreak. Caused by a strain of the virus known as Bundibugyo, for which there is no vaccine or treatment, the outbreak has already caused a suspected 220 deaths and 900 cases, according to the WHO. It has spread to Uganda, where there are 7 cases. Health teams are racing to find thousands of people who may have been exposed to the virus, while also grappling with myriad challenges that make it difficult to contain. Problems at a local level include lack of basic supplies as well as mistrust from a community scarred by previous outbreaks. Globally, the response is hampered by the withdrawal of the U.S. from the WHO and wider funding cuts, many health sources said. Documents from Friday's virtual coordination meeting show that, as of last week, only 7% of the 1,200 people identified as contacts of suspected Ebola patients have been found and followed up. The WHO put the number at more than 2,000 on Wednesday. The outbreak is outpacing the response, said the WHO director. Attacks on health facilities make tracking cases and their contacts nearly impossible. In eastern Congo, the worst-hit area, hospitals have been attacked and isolation tents burned by angry mobs, reclaiming bodies of loved ones, apparently unaware of risks from infectious corpses. That is hindering the operation to stop the spread of the virus and track those at risk in an area already racked with conflict and with poor health infrastructure, 3 experts said. Several sources, including one U.S. official briefed on the Ebola response and another working with WHO, said problems would have been solved more easily and quickly in the past, when the U.S. worked with WHO and often co-led the international response to outbreaks. The U.S. left the organization in January and has cut international aid funding more broadly, alongside a number of other wealthy countries.
As part of our newspaper reading, we will now present today's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. Barning Robert. Dr. Robert Bull Jr. Cordaro Maria Ni Velardita. Janowski George. O'Leary Charles. Pier Paoli James, nicknamed Peppy. Wilcox Thomas. On Toonie Murchie, 73, a prominent donor to UB Athletics. Walk through the University of Buffalo's North Campus in Amherst, and you could be hard-pressed to find an athletic facility does not have either the Murchie family name on it or was constructed with the help of the Murchie family. He is survived by his wife, Deanna, 4 children and grandchildren. On the national level, Grizz Chapman, who starred as a bodyguard for Tracy Morgan's character on 30 Rock, died in his sleep this weekend. He was 52 years old. Also on the national level, Rob Bass, the voice behind the 1988 hit It Takes Two, he died and he was 59 years old. Once again, if you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555.
And now we turn to our horoscope, the Royal Stars. Happy birthday for Thursday, May 28th, 2026. You see the big picture. You're original, imaginative, and futuristic. This is a year of learning and teaching. Take time to renew your spiritual or religious beliefs. The stars show the kind of day you'll have. 5 is dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, and 1 difficult. And with perusing these horoscopes, your day is either going to be average or so-so. Aries, average day. Be mindful of others today because this is a challenging day. At home, issues with parents and older family members might be intense. Tonight, passion and intensity. Taurus, average day. Today, the moon is opposite your sign. It is also at odds with fiery Mars and Pluto, which means relationships with partners, spouses, and close friends will be intense. Tonight, cooperate. Gemini, average day. This is a challenging day for many. For you, the Sun and Mercury in your sign give you an energy and an interest in conversing with others. Tonight, get organized. Cancer, so-so day. Don't worry if you feel cut off from others today. You might even feel lonely, criticized, or diminished by someone. Tonight, socialize. Leo, average day. Conversations with authority figures, parents, bosses, and the police, as well as those who are closest to you, will be challenging today. Tonight, rest. Virgo, a so-so day. Practice patience when talking to siblings, relatives, and daily contacts today to avoid arguments. Tonight, an interesting conversation. Libra, average day. Try to avoid money squabbles or arguments about your possessions today. Nevertheless, don't let anyone bully you, try to control you, or push you into doing something you don't want to do. Tonight, maintain your belongings. Scorpio, so-so day. Your emotions are quite strong today, which could easily put you at odds with a partner, spouse, or close friend. Tonight, you're confident. Sagittarius, average day. Even though you might choose to play things low-key or hide behind the scenes, this is a challenging day for dealing with others, especially at work. Tonight, seek solitude. Capricorn, so-so day. Be patient when dealing with friends and groups today. People are quick to anger. Others are quick to be pushy, even bullying. Tonight, be friendly. Aquarius, an average day. People are quick to argue today, and tense situations are all around you. Therefore, it's important that you know you are high vis and people will notice you more than usual. Tonight, be modest. Excuse me. Pisces, a so-so day. Steer clear of controversial issues today. They will quickly disintegrate into nasty power struggles and arguments. Tonight, learn and explore.
And from Today in History. In 1971, the Soviet Union launched its Mars 3 probe, which in December of that year became the first craft to successfully execute a soft landing on Mars. 1998, Pakistan performed its first test of nuclear weapons, detonating 5 devices underground. In 1998, President Bill Clinton signed the executive order to prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation for federal civilian employees. And in 2016, after a 3-year-old boy fell into an enclosure at the Cincinnati Zoo, the gorilla hombre grabbed and dragged the child, prompting the zoo's response team to shoot and kill the gorilla. I think a lot of us remember that one.
Mm-hmm.
And from Political Notebook, former AG Bondi has thyroid cancer. Former Attorney General Pam Bondi was diagnosed with thyroid cancer after leaving the Justice Department in April, she told CNN. President Trump fired Bondi as Attorney General in early April, and Todd Blanche is now serving as acting Attorney General. She is scheduled to testify Friday in the House Oversight Committee's Jeffrey Epstein probe. Axios was the first to report Bondi's diagnosis and also reported that she will have a new role in the administration, joining the Presidential Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. And Biden sues DOJ over release of recordings. Former Democratic President Joe Biden sued the Department of Justice on Tuesday, seeking to release the audio recordings of transcripts of private conversations with his biographer in 2016 and 2017. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, May 28th. On your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
Ruth Nwatniak
and Pat Lamont.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Pat Lamont.
and Ruth Nowotniak, and we'll go to our city and region section. Settlement okayed for family of fallen firefighter Arno. This is by Justin Sondel, who's a news staff reporter. The Common Council on Wednesday approved more than $8.3 million to settle several lawsuits, including $5.9 million that will go to Sarah Elizabeth Tierney, the widow of firefighter Jason Arno, who was killed in the line of duty on March 2023, and to Arno's estate. In her 2023 lawsuit against the City of Buffalo and the Fire Department, Tierney alleged the city failed to properly train and supervise firefighters, failed to follow proper procedures, and failed to provide proper equipment to the firefighters. After the Claims Committee meeting ended, University District Council member Rashid Wyatt said Arno's death was unfortunate and that settling with Tierney was the right thing to do. Arno, 37, died March 1st of 2023, battling a blaze in a building at 743 Main Street that housed a costume shop. Workers were doing masonry work with a blowtorch when the fire started. Rosa Pizzi, the city's Corporation Counsel, said that her office believes that the settlements offer the best financial outcome for the city. But, she said, particularly with the Arno lawsuit, the settlement also avoids putting the family and the community through an emotional trial. Legally, from our analysis, we think this is the best outcome. Particularly in some of the instances today, there are reasons why we think for the community this is a good outcome. Other settlements approved during the Claims Committee meeting include $1.4 million to Jake Reinhardt and Taylor Schmeider and their tenants. In January 2021, bounty hunters showed up at their Seneca Babcock neighborhood home looking for Reinhardt's brother Luke, assisted by 7 Buffalo police officers. The bounty hunters demanded to be let inside, pointing a shotgun and an AR-15 at Jake Reinhardt. Schmider, who was pregnant at the time, and their 3-year-old daughter, despite Jake Reinhardt asking to see a warrant, the bounty hunters never produced and asking them to get off of his property. Buffalo police officers who assisted the bounty hunters and entered the home without a warrant, according to the lawsuit. Second, $185,000 and $315,000, respectively, to 2 unnamed minors. Even in the Arno lawsuit, there were signs that the fire department could have done a better job with training and following protocols. Police Commissioner Erica Shields, who started on the job this month, has repeatedly said that improving training would be a focus for the department under her watch. The settlements are part of a pattern of large settlements in the recent years. In March, the council approved more than $1.7 million in settlements, with $1.3 million of that total tied to accusations of misconduct or negligence from Buffalo police officers. Pat?
Okay. Battle over AM&A's building appears to have concluded. After 6 years of legal wrangling involving at least 7 different parties, the AM&A's department store in downtown finally has a clear owner, sort of. But it is not clear what it means for the future of the hulking former retail complex on Main Street that has been the subject of intense hand-wringing for years by the city business and political leaders. In a complicated 19-page ruling handed down Tuesday, State Supreme Court Justice John B. Licata awarded title of the landmark Main Street property back to the original Chinese investment entity that bought it in 2014, Landco H&L. That voided and purported 2020 sale to a different group that had sparked a series of interwoven lawsuits. But he also awarded ownership of that first entity, and therefore the building itself, to the other investment group, 377 Main Realty LLC, that had tried to buy the building 6 years ago. That effectively turns over control of both Landco and the building to the new investors, Andy Chow and his girlfriend, Elena Yifu, who had planned to turn the 12-story complex into apartments and commercial space. More significantly, the ruling could end the long fight that has left the vacant and deteriorating building in a state of legal and physical limbo for more than 6 years, on top of more than 20 years of abandonment and neglect since it was last occupied. And it could either pave the way for a long-promised redevelopment project or clear a path for the city to more cleanly pursue its own efforts to seize the building and put it in someone else's hands. This decision and order is intended to finally resolve this matter, Licata wrote. However, there is no indication yet as to whether the ruling will actually produce the ownership clarity that city officials had long hoped for, because the losing parties could still appeal the decision. Besides the two women who previously fought over ownership of Landco, Li Li and Jaime Sally Liu, the cases also involved a third-party investor in the redevelopment project as well as a lender. The ruling was a victory for the investor, Wai Ping Kao, who invested $500,000 in Landco's original project more than a decade ago through the EB-5 visa program, and then loaned an additional $6.5 million in 2017. Landau defaulted, so with interest and fees, Welping is now owed $10 million and has a court judgment for that debt. Since the building stays with Landco, she can still pursue her claim and seek a sale of the building to repay her. But the judge ruled that BP3 Capital, which loaned money for the 2020 transaction that was voided, can't place a lien on the property to recover its own money, although it still has the mortgage and has other guarantees that it can use. It's also not clear whether Chow or Yao, who were dating, will return to their project or just sell the building. He is the majority owner, but she was listed as president and acted as the face of 377 Main. And both Chow and Yao have their own checkered history. Yao pleaded guilty in January to state criminal charges in Oklahoma for a conspiracy to defraud the state and unlawful use of proceeds of illegal activity related to a marijuana business. She was given a suspended 10-year sentence and fined $15,000. Chow was indicted in April 2025 for a reported $7 million deed fraud in Brooklyn and also faces charges in Oklahoma. City officials and other attorneys for various sides either could not be reached or declined to comment. The court ruling follows more than 6 years of legal machinations involving a maze of interlocking relationships. But at the core is the 375,000 square foot building itself, which has suffered from a lack of clarity over who is responsible for its maintenance, repairs, and eventual renovation. Sandwiched between M&T Bank Corp's headquarters tower and the Rand building, the AM&A building was once a glamorous fixture of downtown Buffalo. It was a longtime home of the J.N. Adam Company and later Adam Alderman Anderson department stores until AM&A's was acquired in 1994 by Bon-Ton Department Stores. Bon-Ton continued to operate for a year before it closed the store in March 1995. Ruth?
Could that have been a meteor over western New York skies? This is by Mackenzie Schumann, a news staff reporter. The skies lit up. A fireball came into view. Videos of the moment flooded social media. Was it a meteor? Maybe. Although whatever it was has not been confirmed, videos posted on the social media platform X showed a bright ball in the sky streaking downward just after 5 a.m. Wednesday, then disappearing after a bright flash. One video, captured from a doorbell camera in East Amherst, showed the possible fireball, and although birds can be heard chirping in the background, no other sounds can be heard. A social media user identified as Tori Segula Kaiser said they heard it. I was up having coffee on the porch and heard it, the user posted. It was a large explosion with smaller secondary explosions. Another video online, captured from a Nest camera in Elma, showed the possible meteor streaking through the air. No verified reports of a meteor fireball were posted on the American Meteor Society's Fireball Reports webpage Wednesday. Fireballs happen when small meteors enter Earth's atmosphere, and because of the atmospheric friction, heat up and then can break apart rapidly or explode, according to NASA. During the atmospheric entry phase, an impacting object is both slowed and heated by atmospheric friction, the agency's Center for Near-Earth Object Studies website said. In front of it, the bow shock develops where atmospheric gases are compressed and heated. Some of this energy is radiated to the object, causing it to ablate, and in most cases to break apart. Fragmentation increases the amount of atmosphere intercepted and so enhances ablation and atmospheric braking. The object catastrophically disrupts when the force of the unequal pressures on the front and back sides exceeds its tensile strength. Meteors causing such fireballs are typically not large enough to survive passage through Earth's atmosphere intact, NASA's website said. However, sometimes fragments can be recovered on the ground. It continued.
Falk School students get their hands dirty. As the gardening season heats up, a group of students from Stanley G. Falk School are using technology and trade skills to help a local nonprofit that builds community gardens. Grassroots Gardens of Western New York receive tools and garden equipment for students created themselves at the Foundry, an organization that teaches students and adults skills such as metal fabrication, welding, and 3D printing, and serves Buffalo East Side neighborhoods. The students make weed pullers and support brackets for garden boxes operated by Grassroots, which describes itself as an organization of activists, gardeners, and neighbors who create and maintain a network of more than 100 community gardens in Buffalo and Niagara Falls. The metal brackets will help keep the corners of the garden beds in place and extend the life of the beds, which must be rebuilt if they come apart. Grassroots rebuilds about 110 beds per year, and it is a big expense, said Justin Baumgardner, Development Director at Grassroots Gardens. The students presented the items to Grassroots on Wednesday to be used at the Broadway Community Garden at 389 Broadway. We were always excited to partner with the amazing students at the Foundry and Stanley G. Falk School, Baumgardner said. It's inspiring to see these young makers develop their skills and give back to Buffalo's green spaces. The tools they are making will directly help our gardeners grow fresh food in our community. It was the first time experience for many of the participants, including 11th grader Victor Ball. Just doing stuff that I've never done before was one of the best aspects of the program, he said, who might pursue a job in skilled trades now that he has been introduced to this kind of work. Anthony Myricks, a graduating senior, explained how to operate the weed pullers he built and said the program is one he would recommend. If I had a chance to make those again, I would, he said. Organizers said the project to create equipment for Grassroots Gardens aligned well with the Foundry's focus on education and entrepreneurship. Its programming includes in-school and after-school arts, STEM, and entrepreneurship sessions for youth. The Foundry's maker spaces workshops that include a workshop, a metal shop, a tech lab, and includes 3D printing and a textile shop, serve hundreds of students, entrepreneurs, and community groups each year. The Stanley Falk School has a long-standing partnership with the Foundry for the past several years, said Lisa Dombeck, an assistant superintendent. The partnership is a wonderful experience for students as they gain valuable, authentic skills that they can bring into the real world. There's nothing quite the look on a student's face when they see something they've made, said Drew Bratz, a staff member at the Foundry. It completely changes how they view their own work. It's not just a project, it's proof that the skills they've built in our makerspaces are real, and that's what they do actually matters in the community. Joanne Jones, an 11th grader, liked welding. Little sparks got on me, but it's all right, said Jones, who plans already to open his own business painting buildings, but he is keeping his options open. If that career doesn't work out, then yes, I will come back and learn how to make stuff like this. It was Elijah Johnson's first year. The 11th grader said it was a wonderful experience all the way around. I used a plasma cutter and metal grinder to make the wheat pullers. That was my favorite part. I'm so happy that I was honored to do this, and I would really love to do it next year. Going through the program, they said it also made the experience with best friends, also made the experience more fun. Just being here with these two really just made it wonderful, said Johnson. Good for them.
Sounds like a wonderful program. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 16 minutes past the hour, and we will go to our sports section. Our first article is by Jay Skursky, who's a news sports reporter. Bills' new defense gives Oliver freedom. Ed Oliver was uniquely himself Tuesday. The Buffalo Bills defensive tackle watched the team's fourth practice of the spring, but no, he's not hurt, he said afterward. I got a little oops, but it's fine, he said. With his absence explained as only he can, Oliver was asked about playing in a new defensive scheme for the first time in his 8th NFL season. Everything I know and come to know, yeah, throw all that out, he said. I guess it's like a breakup, kind of. Everything you did in the last relationship, throw all that away. It's a whole new other person, so you've got to relearn. It's fun, it's different. Change is always hard, but sometimes change is good. So I look at it with that kind of optimism and just let it ride. The Bills are banking on that change being good for Oliver, which in turn will be good for the entire defense. The 28-year-old is squarely in his prime and was off to a dynamic start to the 2025 season before injuries shut him down for a lengthy stretch. He had 3 sacks, 5 quarterback hits, 7 tackles for loss, and 1 forced fumble in just 3 games in the regular season. That allowed Oliver to start studying what was coming from the opposing offense. He had a sack in each of the 3 games, and it's fair to wonder what his season would have looked like had he not been wrecked by injuries. An ankle injury suffered after Week 1 kept him out until Week 6 against Atlanta. After the team's bye week, Oliver suffered a torn biceps against the Carolina Panthers, which knocked him out of the lineup until the divisional playoff loss to the Broncos, a game in which Oliver was able to play just 16 snaps. While rehabbing his biceps injury, he had arthroscopic knee surgery. It definitely does suck. You start questioning yourself, why me? You go through the pity party and all that. But hey, I'm healthy. I've got to know, so maybe this year will be different. New defensive coordinator Jim Leonhard certainly hopes so. Leonhard doesn't show a lot of emotion when speaking to the media, but his excitement was evident when talking about what Oliver can do in his system. He's going to be really disruptive in this defense, he said. The base defense being more different for him than what it's been in the past, and in all reality, a little bit more freedom than he's had in the past. Oliver has noticed a different approach with Leonhard, who had a 10-year NFL playing career running the defense. Whereas former defensive coordinator Bobby Babich might have had more energy, Leonhard is more reserved. Different, but still the same, still goods, Oliver said. Oliver pointed to the production of Broncos defensive lineman Zach Allen as reason for being excited about playing in Leonhard's defense. Last season, Allen became the Broncos' first interior defensive lineman to earn All-Pro first-team honors since the 1999 season. Over the past 2 years, he's registered 15 and a half sacks and a whopping 87 quarterback hits. I know it sounds cliche, but if you turn on the tape, the guy they had in Denver was pretty good, and he looks like he's playing pretty free, Oliver said. Hopefully I can have that same success in the same system. Pat?
Okie doke, let's go see what's happening with the Sabres. You want to, this is the, by Rachel Lindsay. You want to lock guys like that up, says Sabres GM. This is the second in a series that examines 4 up-and-coming players for the Buffalo Sabres and how they would impact the lineup for 26-27. Zach Benson quickly climbed to the top of his game with the Buffalo Sabres during the playoffs this spring. He scored key goals in 13 games against the Boston Bruins and Montreal Canadiens. He fought for pucks. He even found ways to get under an opponent's skin, and the playoffs magnified his reputation. I've kind of played like this forever, he said. I've always played with an edge. Benson became a cult hero of sorts in Buffalo and across the NHL with his unapologetic style of play, particularly in the playoffs. Consider him a young man's Brad Marchand, if you will, a player that brings the juice to his team. Do we call him a celebrity now? Sabres left wing Jason Zucker said wryly. The one thing about Benny is that he didn't change his game, right? Nothing changed. The difference is he scored goals in big moments, and I say that as a huge compliment. He plays that way every single game. But the left wing also proved that if the Sabres want to commit to him on a long-term basis, the juice is worth the squeeze. Benson, 21, is in the final year of a 3-year entry-level contract with a cap hit of $950,000 and becomes a restricted free agent this summer. But the Sabres retain rights and can negotiate a new contract for him. It could be a tight squeeze given that although the salary cap rises from $95.5 million in 25-26 to $104 million in 26-27, the Sabres have to prioritize the re-signings and renegotiations of a handful of key cogs from this season's lineup. Puckpedia.com on Wednesday projected the Sabres to have just under $12 million in cap space for 26-27. Among those key players, Alex Tuch, Beck Meliston, who set to become unrestricted free agents July 1, Benson, Peyton Krabs, and Michael Kesserling became restricted free agents. The Sabres could renegotiate the contract of defenseman Bowen Byram. I think we're really in a good place as far as our depth goes with the team, Sabres general manager Jarmo Kekalainen said. Probably I have to make some hard decisions to fit in all 23 guys under the roster limitations and the salary cap. I always say a positive problem to have if you have too many good players. I'll take that all day, any day, so I'm looking forward to the challenge. He, though, made it clear that keeping Benson is a priority. You want to lock guys like that up. I see him as a true core piece that fills all the boxes. Maybe not the height, but everything else. I mean, the way he plays, he's just relentless, a dog on a bone. I can't say enough good things about Zach Benson. He's got skill, he's got hockey sense, he's got instinct, he's relentless, he's a competitor. What a great playoff he had. For a basis of comparison, Kekalainen was more restrained when discussing Tuch, who could be the marquee name in the otherwise meager free agency class. Benson missed 12 games in the first 6 weeks of the season due to an infected facial laceration and lower body left leg injury, then missed 4 games in February due to a left shoulder injury. He didn't score his first goal until December 11th, the go-ahead goal in a 3-2 win over Vancouver. But as the fixture at left wing, the Sabres 2023 first-round pick played on each of the Sabres' 4 lines at some point in 65 regular season games. Benson flourished not just as a scorer or as any playmaker or as an option to the power play, but as a skilled agitator who took only 42 minutes in penalties this season. He was also plus minus 27 this season, second to Matthias Samuelsson plus minus 41. That helped spark the Sabres, particularly in the playoffs. He scored 5 goals with 4 assists in 13 games, including the game-winning goal in a 3-2 win in Game 4 of the second-round series in Montreal. Some tough decisions to be made.
Yes. And from the NBA, Knicks' magical return to finals has been a long time in making. This is from a Newswire service. Long-suffering New York Knicks fans woke up on Tuesday still buzzing from a night of celebration after their basketball team advanced to the NBA Finals that they will enter as underdogs, regardless of who they face in their bid to end the 53-year title drought. A sea of blue and orange flooded New York City streets well into the night on Monday after the Knicks completed a 4-game sweep of the Cleveland Cavaliers to reach the finals for the first time since 1999. Many of the fans carried brooms, which they used to playfully sweep sidewalks and wave in the air during the celebrations. New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani poked fun at the Cavaliers on X, writing, "At NYC Sanitation, I'd like to report a sweep." It's a magical thing. It's a historic thing, Knicks center Karl Anthony Towns said after scoring a team-high 19 points in the clinching game in Cleveland. It's something New York has been dying for a long, long time. But for us players, we understand that the job's not done. After years of struggle, the NBA's third most valuable franchise began to turn things around with the arrival of team president Leon Rose, who came on board in March 2020, just as the team was headed toward the 7th consecutive season out of the playoffs. Rose helped transform the Knicks from a laughingstock into a championship contender. They have only missed the postseason once in the last 6 seasons and reached the penultimate round of the 2025 playoffs, where they lost in 6 games to the Indiana Pacers. Jalen Brunson, who was named this year's Eastern Conference Finals MVP, has led the way since signing with the Knicks 4 years ago. The team has built around the guard point, bringing in players such as 6-time All-Star Towns. The Knicks playing for the championship sets up an intriguing storyline for the best-of-7-game NBA Finals. They have not won a title since 1973, and this will be just their 3rd appearance in the finals since then, having lost in 94 and 99. Pat?
And from the Major League Baseball, I'm just going to give you who the leads are since we're a little short on time. But yesterday, Armand Rosario hit 2 of the Yankees' 6 home runs as visiting New York beat the Kansas City Royals for a 12-state regular season meeting, prevailing 15-1 on Tuesday night. And these are the standings in the American League. East, the leader is Tampa Bay with 34 wins and 18 losses. In the Central, the leader is Cleveland with 33 wins and 25 losses. In the American League West, the leader is the Athletics with 27 wins, 28 losses. In the National League, Atlanta is leading with 37 wins and 18 losses. In the Central National League, Milwaukee is leading with 33 wins and 20 losses. And in the West National League, Los Angeles is winning with 35 wins and 20 losses. Tonight's games are the LA Raiders at Detroit in the American League, Minnesota at Chicago, Toronto at Baltimore, and Houston at Texas. In the National League, the Chicago Cubs at Pittsburgh. In the Interleague, Atlanta at Boston. And that sums it up. Enjoy your baseball, you baseball fans.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is approximately 30 minutes past the hour, and we will go to Asking Eric. Let's see what he has to say. Atheist offended when others offer their prayers. Dear Eric, I'm writing this to get your opinion about something that has been bothering me for a while, but has been exacerbated by the recent illness of my mother. Although I was brought up Catholic, in my adult life, I am a practicing atheist. I'm not one to ever bring that up unless in a safe environment to do so, or if I know I am among folks who lean the same way. I am of the opinion that all should be allowed their own religious beliefs. However, proselytizing is and should be off limits. As an atheist, I am offended when people say they will keep my mom in their thoughts and prayers. I sound unappreciative. I'm not at all, and try to hint to my friends and family where I stand by replying or even stating up front, please keep her in your thoughts, or thanks for keeping her in your thoughts, hoping people will get the hint. They usually don't. Is there a better way to humbly communicate how I'm feeling without sounding ungrateful? I am always careful, when the shoe is on the other foot, to say to those with sick loved ones, I will keep them in my thoughts. Would those who pray appreciate me adding, but not in prayers, because I'm not that sort? I think not, but I feel like that they push their prayers on me. Semi-closeted and offended atheist. Dear atheist, is it always clear to whom or what these prayers are being directed? That is to say, must it always be a prayer spoken to a God you don't believe in? Or is it possible that they could also be prayers sent up to the universe or nature or something else entirely? Perhaps that difference is a cold comfort to you, but often thoughts and prayers becomes a shorthand for well wishes or condolences. It's perfectly fair for you to ask others not to pray for you, but it might be freeing to think of and prayers in the context of your mother, less than proselytizing, and more as friends expressing their own internal practice. Other people's prayers aren't necessarily a commentary on your beliefs, and if your mother does practice a religion, the comment may be more for her benefit. It's perfectly fine to say, I am an atheist and I don't believe in prayer, but I respect that you do, and I thank you for the energy you're sending my mother's way. Dear Eric, you've received numerous letters from those who say their gestures of friendship are not reciprocated. Some friendships, like the example by Uncelebrated, whose friends didn't recognize or celebrate a cancer battle, have spanned weeks, months, or even years of a seemingly one-sided promotion of the relationship with the lopsided sacrificial investment of time and energy. It boggles my mind that I have yet to hear two possible explanations. One, introvert versus extrovert personalities. And two, that the unresponsive friend doesn't enjoy their company and would prefer not to meet with them. I've yet to see you or others side with the friend who wants more space, or even in some cases apparently isn't interested in continuing the relationship. My thought is, they can't take a hint. Your reply to Uncelebrated was that maybe they can put this friendship to bed. That can be done by giving them space and allowing them to make the next move, or not, to get together. Maybe after months or years, they will notice that it has been a while and will reach out. I think for an introvert, a year of no contact feels like only a month. But for an extrovert, it's the opposite. Signed, Give Me Space. Dear Space, I hear your point. But there have been many letters from people who write that they want space or don't want to be in a relationship anymore. And my advice is often, if not always, say it directly, because a hint is not an answer. I'm reminded of the game show Password, in which one contestant had to guess a word based on a one-word hint from the other contestant. Sometimes they got it, but many times they guessed wrong. That kind of communication breakdown is common in many relationships. We're not in each other's heads. So if a person is an introvert and wants less contact, I encourage them to say that so their desire can't be misconstrued. And conversely, if we're confused about other people's actions, we should ask them about them, rather than guessing at a narrative in our minds. This isn't to say that giving someone space isn't effective or warranted, but we get farther by telling someone, I'm sensing that you need space. I'm going to honor that, but let me know if I've guessed incorrectly.
And to our first life feature. Researchers building biggest database on Asian American health. Researchers at the University of California in Irvine believe in a new public health study they're helping to run, the first of its size to focus solely on Asian Americans, will help unravel some mysterious and troubling new trends linking race and cancer. Over the next 4 years, UCI researchers hope to recruit 1,800 Asian Americans living in Orange and Los Angeles counties to participate in a year-long survey-based study. As it is collected, the Southern California data will be merged with similar pools of information collected by researchers at the University of California, San Francisco, University of California, Davis, Cedars-Sinai, and Temple University. The combined reports gathered from different parts of the country will create what researchers have named ASPIRE, Asian American Prospective Research Cohort, a pool of information from roughly 20,000 people. Participation in the study will be limited by age, people ages 40 to 75, and health participants can't have a known cancer diagnosis of race, Asian or Asian American or multiracial. And the data will be based on questions asked in 4 surveys given over the course of a year, touching on topics as diverse as diet and lifestyle, income, sleep, and stress factors, such as racial discrimination. Some participants will also be asked to give saliva samples, meaning genetic information also will help form the database. When complete, the ASPIRE cohort is expected to be the biggest pool of health information ever collected about Asian Americans, a demographic that accounts for nearly 8% of the U.S. population, yet is the subject of only 0.17% of research funded by the National Institute of Health. Over time, that data could be used by researchers involved in cancer and other diseases, and by researchers looking at non-health issues ranging from demographics and job trends to urban design. When I was training as an epidemiologist at Harvard, I worked on data from the Nurses' Health Study, which is a pool of information collected over several decades from tens of thousands of people. But that data set is 97% white. Ours will be the first study in the nation to look at this many people from Asian cultures, said Dr. Sum Lee, a professor of hematology and oncology at the UC Irvine School of Medicine, and co-leader of the Cancer Control Program at the Chow Family Comprehensive Cancer Center. It will be interesting to find out what we learn from this data. This will be something unique. The study is coming at a time when cancer trends, particularly among certain Asian American groups, are shifting in ways that confound researchers. Overall, cancer deaths in the United States have fallen dramatically during most of this century. 2 years ago, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention issued a report that found cancer death rates in the United States dropped by nearly a third, 29.2%, from 1999 to 2022. The trend reflects gains in cancer treatments and early testing, genetic advances, lifestyle shifts, and legislation aimed at curbing tobacco use. The decline in cancer mortality also is viewed as particularly significant because it has come during a time when the U.S. population is growing older and more obese, two factors that tend to drive up cancer deaths. But not all of the cancer trends are rosy, and researchers have been puzzled by a few specific and glaring counter trends, including some that suggest rising cancer risks for the nation's diverse Asian American community. Asian American women who've never smoked are twice as likely as non-smoking women to be diagnosed with lung cancer. In fact, more than half all Asian American women who are diagnosed with lung cancer are non-smokers, according to the Prevent Cancer Foundation. That's not true for any other race or ethnic group. Although Asian American women historically have been less likely than other women to be diagnosed with breast cancer, recent trends point to a reversal, with breast cancer rates rising for Asian American women than in any other racial or ethnic group. The trend varies, however, among different Asian American groups, with breast cancer accounting for 17% of all cancers among women and 44% among Fijian women, according to the American Cancer Society. Heart disease is the leading cause of death for Americans overall, followed by cancer. But the order is reversed for many Asian Americans, with cancer ranked as the number one killer for Chinese, Filipino, Korean, and Vietnamese Americans. That's true of no other non-Asian racial or ethnic group. These trends are particularly important in Southern California, which has the nation's biggest Asian American population. While Asian Americans account for nearly 8% of overall U.S. population, Asians and Pacific Islanders account for about 25% of all residents in Orange County and about 17% of residents in Los Angeles County, which has the nation's single biggest Asian American community, 1.7 million people. Researchers have some theories for why some groups are being hit harder by different types of cancer. Diet, for example, is viewed as a potential catalyst. Lee noted that as cancer rates have shifted among Asian Americans, they're also risen in some Asian countries, particularly where Western food is starting to eclipse traditional meals in agriculture. The Western lifestyle might be part of this, but that's why this data will be helpful. It's not just diet or education or social stresses. Nothing is proven to be one single risk factor. That's be interesting.
43 North program to end its pitch contest this year. This is by Mike Petro, news staff reporter. After 12 years as one of the world's largest and most lucrative business plan pitch contests, 43 North will hold its final competition in October. 43 North plans to then cease operations of its accelerator program by the end of 2027, the final year it is being funded by the state, and look to the 43 North Foundation to continue its work. Last year, the foundation made a $100 million investment in building startups over the next decade. The decision to end the 43 North competition, widely credited with helping to spur new interest in entrepreneurs creating businesses in the Buffalo-Niagara region, is a major shift away from a competition that brings 5 new startups to the region annually to one that focuses on nurturing and encouraging ones that develop here. For this year, 43 North will still choose 5 winners who each receive $1 million toward their startup. And then those companies will come to Western New York for the required 1 year to grow using the resources provided by the accelerator. But 43 North will no longer be around starting in 2028, sparking questions about what will happen to its startup portfolio, as well as its staff and office space at Seneca One. Leadership on both 43 North and the 43 North Foundation described this as a natural evolution for the organization as the needs of the local startup ecosystem change. 43 North has likely had the biggest payoff of any Buffalo Billion program dollar for dollar and in job creation. So there is a major challenge ahead for the 43 North Foundation to continue that and match the momentum the competition created on an international stage for the Western New York startup ecosystem. There is certainly an evolution. It is not an ending, said Colleen Heidegger, president of the 43 North since 2020. This is a signal of success and that this community is ready for what's next. What we need next is what the foundation is focusing on. This would be a very different conversation if we didn't have the foundation. The 43 North Foundation, built mostly on equity from ACV Auctions, which received a $1 million 43 North investment in 2016 and went public on NASDAQ 5 years later, says it is ready to carry the load. In exchange for the $1 million prize, 43 North gets a 5% ownership stake in each winner. And for the past 5 years, the foundation has reinvested that value into the startup community. The foundation plans to continue to build on the legacy of the 43 North brand by focusing on creating new Buffalo-born startups through AI-led venture studio Radial Ventures, growing and retaining local talent with the support of Tech Buffalo, telling Buffalo's innovation story with the Series B online platform, and strengthening relationships between startups and established corporations in the region through its corporate connectivity initiative. 43 North is run by very successful entrepreneurs and business people, and good, successful leaders look to their business every year to make pivots, said Bill Maggio, board chair of the 43 North Foundation, who has been involved with 43 North since its inception. It's time for us to focus on a broader set of priorities that are going to accelerate the progress we're making in helping Buffalo win the race for relevance that we find ourselves in, he added. It may be a surprise to some, but for us it's the next logical progression. This is something that has been in the works for the past few years, but the decision was ultimately made by the 43 North Board, Maggio said. Excuse me. Okay.
Cut. Okay. Presidential potential. These are Democrats generating buzz about possible bids for the White House. We'll start off with past candidates. 2 Democrats with prior presidential runs have taken early steps or openly discussed another bid. Peter Buttigieg. He was Transportation Secretary under Democratic President Joe Biden. He has more than $5 million in his political action committee and traveled to potentially early nominating states of Iowa and New Hampshire. He is viewed as a sharp debater and isn't afraid to criticize Republicans on their own turf, including on the conservative Fox News channel. Next, Kamala Harris. The former vice president has been the most explicit about running again after losing to Trump in 2024. I'm thinking about it, she said in April. She has high name recognition and polled well among Democratic voters in early 2028 surveys. If she runs again, it would be her 3rd presidential bid. Candidates who previously ran and lost are often viewed skeptically by primary voters. Now we'll go down to governors. Several Democratic governors are seen as potential contenders, drawing early attention through travel, fundraising, and growing national profiles. Andy Beshear, the Kentucky governor, became chair of the Democratic Governors Association this year, giving him a platform to promote his record in a heavily Republican state. He has more than $1.2 million in his political action committee and has visited South Carolina, likely a key early primary state. He was elected twice in a state Trump won by more than 30 percentage points in 2024. However, he is not well known outside the state. Josh Shapiro. The Pennsylvania governor released a memoir this year and has about $36 million cash on hand for his gubernatorial reelection bid this November. He's a popular governor in a key presidential swing state that Trump won in 2024. Shapiro, who is Jewish, is viewed as a pro-Israel Democrat at a time when criticism of Israel is rising among Democrats over Israel's war in Gaza and Iran, although he opposes the U.S. Israeli-led war against Iran. Next, Gavin Newsom. California's governor built a national profile through sharp criticism of Trump, released a memoir in February, and recently visited South Carolina. He has more than $4 million in his political action committee, according to Federal Election Commission data. However, his state has some of the highest gasoline prices, taxes, and homelessness rates in the U.S., issues the Republicans would likely seek to capitalize on. J.B. Pritzker, the Illinois governor, said in April he was focused on his 2026 gubernatorial reelection campaign, but he traveled to likely early primary states, including New Hampshire and Nevada, and has not ruled out a presidential bid. He gained a national profile by criticizing Trump's deployment of National Guard troops and federal immigration agents to the U.S. Other governors, Maryland's Wes Moore, though he said he is not running, and Michigan's Gretchen Whitmer, who played down the prospect. Okay, next we'll go to U.S. Senators. Mark Kelly, the retired NASA astronaut and U.S. Navy pilot, has the largest cash stockpile of any potential 2028 Democratic candidate, with more than $22 million in his principal congressional committee, according to FEC filings. He visited South Carolina and Iowa and hasn't ruled out a 2028 run. He won elected office in Arizona, a presidential swing state. He has credibility on gun reform as a husband of former U.S. Representative Gabby Giffords. Others senators interested: Arizona's Ruben Gallego, Connecticut's Chris Murphy, Georgia's John Ossoff, and New Jersey's Cory Booker. And progressives that are interested: Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the U.S. representative from New York who identifies as a democratic socialist, is one of the country's most prominent progressives and is seen as the likeliest heir to the movement that the U.S. Senate Bernie Sanders built through his 2 presidential campaigns. When asked in May interview about her presidential ambition, she did not rule out running. "My ambition is to change this country," she said. She is popular with many Democratic voters and regularly draws enthusiastic crowds at her public appearances. Other possible contender is Ro Khanna, a U.S. representative from California, who said in March he will decide on a bid after November. And finally, Rahm Emanuel, who served as a U.S. representative from 2003 to 2009, White House Chief of Staff to President Barack Obama from 2009 to 2010, Mayor of Chicago from 2011 to 2019, and Ambassador to Japan from 2022 to 2025. In June 2025, he said he was considering a presidential run, and since argued in media appearances that the party's moderate wing needs renewal. He polls about 1% among likely Democratic primary voters.
And a few shorts. Iran war, spending a drain on military budgets. The Pentagon is feeling the financial squeeze and is struggling in some cases to carry out routine training and maintenance amid its ongoing operations against Iran, with uniformed military leaders pressing Congress to support additional funding. That includes having to limit training exercises, flight training hours, and training for new recruits. Also, the U.S. to negotiate trade agreement with Mexico. The Trump administration's trade agency said Wednesday it will kick off the first of 3 negotiating rounds with Mexico this week to revamp the North American trade agreement, but made no mention of talks with Canada. The first round will be on economic security and rules of origin for key industrial goods. The second round will be focused on agriculture and a level playing field, with a third set of talks scheduled for the week of July 20th. The first Trump administration held trilateral negotiating rounds with both Mexico and Canada to create the existing trade deal, but USTR's statement made no mention of bilateral talks with Canada. There have been few discussions between U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer and his Canadian counterpart, Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc, since early March, and no formal launch of a U.S.-Canada negotiating process. And the FAA orders SpaceX to review rocket mishap. The Federal Aviation Administration ordered SpaceX to investigate why its Starship booster suffered a mishap and crashed into the Gulf of Mexico during a test flight last week. The FAA said it determined the SpaceX Starship Flight 12 launch Friday resulted in a mishap that involved its Super Heavy booster as it flew back to the Gulf of Mexico after stage separation. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, May 28th. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Pat Lamont
and Ruth Nowotniak. And thank you for listening. And remember, send your feedback in.
Welcome summer with your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We're planning a summer bash bigger and better than ever before. It's Friday, June 26th at Creekside Banquet Facility in Grove, located at the corner of Union Road and William Street in Cheektowaga. You're invited to enjoy a buffet chicken and pasta dinner, your first drink on us, a basket raffle, and Buffalo Music Hall of Fame party band The Boys of Summer from 6 to 9 p.m. Tickets are $50 and support the 160 volunteers who read all the programming offered by Radio Reading. That's Friday, June 26th from 6 to 9 p.m. at Creekside Banquet Facility in Grove in Cheektowaga. Get your tickets now by calling 716-821-5555 extension 3 or online at nfradioreading.org. Thank you to New Era Cap Foundation, Tyverin Law, and Perry's Ice Cream for sponsoring this largest event of the year.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the New York Times business section. Following that at noon is today's USA Today. Stay with us.